Hello, I'm George Latimer, Westchester County Executive. I want to take a couple of minutes to talk about the issue at Westchester County Airport and the county's efforts to have a master plan done to project the future of the county airport. It's been a recent news story in the Journal News, and I think it deserves some discussion from our administration's standpoint. Westchester County Airport is an important transportation hub for this county. It has represented one of the reasons why businesses move here and stay here and how people in Westchester County can conveniently travel. It has the same advantages that other modes of transit do, rail stations and our roadway system as well. However, the airport is a difficult neighbor for those people that live in the immediate area around it and those that live under the flight path. So the county's policies have been balanced between those two polarities, using it as an effective transportation facility, but not expanding it so that it has less of an impact on those neighbors around us. Historically, over time, we've had some reduction in noise, but it is still a difficult neighbor for those people who live in proximity to the flight path and to the airport itself. We determined that it was important for us to supplement a master plan that had been drafted in the prior administration and the federal government had helped fund. That master plan would be the first time in over 30 years that we lay out a game plan for what should happen at the county airport for the years to come. And that is a realistic document to be debated before the Board of Legislators and before the people of Westchester County. When we first came into office in 2018, we held a series of public forums to listen to what people had to say about the airport. We held them in different locations. In West Harrison, we were in Chappaqua, we were in White Plains and a number of other places. And we heard from the people who live around the airport and under the flight path just how disruptive the airport could be for them at certain times of the week. What we also did is understood that we needed to have a thoughtful, analytical process that would pass the scrutiny of the Federal Aviation Administration, the FAA, which requires master plans to have a rigor, an intellectual rigor projecting possible capacities at the airport over time. Those plans, 2018 and 2019, began in earnest, but the COVID outbreak in 2020 brought everything to a stop. The airport shut down itself for quite a while, and then when it reopened at lower levels of volume, and it was impossible to make the kind of projections, so we saw what would happen when we got back to whatever it looks like the new normal. Sometime in 2021 and 22, we began to see what new normal looked like, and we're still not yet exactly at pre-COVID levels for all of the things we want to do. But what particularly happened that caused me to make the policy decision to put a pause on our master plan were two lawsuits in which the county has to defend its authority to control the future of the airport in the ways that we've been given that authority. There was a lawsuit back in the 1980s that was adjudicated with stipulations, and in those stipulations, the county government controls the number of passengers per half hour that can come through the terminal on the commercial side, and also the number of gates. And by limiting the number of gates and the number of passengers, you by fact limit the size and the scope of the airplanes that can use the airport and also the amount of demand that can be accommodated. But all of that represents controls that we have on the commercial side of the airport, what you consider the airport when you come into it. And that represents basically 20% of all airport operations. 80% of the airport operations are general aviation, accessed from the west side of the airport, which isn't seen by the traveling public, but represents most of the additional flights that have happened over the years within the authority that the county has to be able to regulate flights. The two lawsuits, one with an organization called Charterists and the other with Millionaire, strikes at whether the county has the direct authority to authorize whether or not a general aviation fixed-based operator can expand their operations, as Millionaire chooses to do, or in the case of Charterists, whether they operate a for-sale seat in a charter flight and can operate that out of the general aviation side, or they are forced to be on the commercial side where we have controls under the terminal use agreement. In court, both of those two cases are critical, and the county is litigating to win those cases to maintain the county's ability to control how the airport operates in ways that we believe we were given the authority back in the 1980s. We felt, and I feel to this day, that to go back to a master plan process that requires us to project possible uses at the airport could undermine the validity of the county's argument in these cases. We need those cases to be adjudicated and completed successfully before we resume the master plan process. We think that's a very realistic thing to do because of the unknowable nature of what happens in a court of law. During this period of time, the costs of doing the master plan have likely risen. Anything that you wanted to do in 2019 that you're getting around to do in 2024 is that much more expensive today than it was then. That's common sense. But what's very important for people in Westchester County to know is the cost of the master plan study, whatever that cost is fully paid for by airport existing revenues. There is not one dime of county property tax dollars that goes into the cost of completing the master plan process. So if it does cost $1 more, it is not a property tax dollar that is coming out of your wallet. It is coming from the revenue generated at the airport. And that's important for you to understand, which is why we look at the cost factor as secondary to the question of whether or not the county can control actions at the airport or not. If we lose that control, then those people who are concerned about the expansion of the airport will have lost the greatest protection that they have, which is the ability for this to be a publicly controlled airport as opposed to being controlled by private interests who will certainly want to expand the airport dramatically because it would be a profitable place for them to operate. There have been some questions about some side questions, temporary parking during a seasonal season, adding some seating to a square footage area. None of these plans increase the number of people that can use the airport in a half an hour, and none of it increases the number of flights per se. If we have people in a standing room only setting, adding seats so they can sit down is merely a matter of providing consumer convenience, not adding to the number of people that come into the building. And we think that those are reasonable accommodations for the people who use the airport, most of whom are Westchester County residents. They may not live in the area, but they are using a public facility, and they should be able to sit instead of stand. And we don't think that people will drive out of their way extra miles because now they can sit rather than stand. We also know that it's very important to understand that we have taken no action in these 6 years of my administration to add to the amount of land that the county has at the airport. We've made no approvals to add to the amount of square footage of general aviation, fixed-based operators during this period of time. We've given no authority for folks to fly outside of the existing voluntary flight restrictions that we have. Now, the fact that they're voluntary means that we can't enforce them. And we tried to do that back in the 1980s by imposing a mandatory curfew, and that was struck down by the judge in the court case. In summary, it's important for you to understand that we're committed to walking a very fine line of balance, that the airport provides an essential transportation service. At the same time, the airport has to be the best possible neighbor that it can be. We've done this. It's a tricky environment, and people have very strong feelings about it, pro and con, but we think that what we've done is sincere. We sincerely intend to complete a master plan process when we can, and to do it in an environment where we've asserted and we can confidently know that we have the ability to shape the future for the next 30 years. I'm George Latimer, Westchester County Executive. If you have any questions, you can reach out to me at glatimer@westchestercountiny.gov, or you can reach our communications department at communications@westchestercountiny.gov. Thank you for watching. Feel free to reach out to us anytime. Have a good day.